The date changes every year because it's part of the lunar calendar, but this past week, on April 5th, 2023, Mainland China celebrated Qingming Festival. Its name just translates to clear and bright holiday, but in English it goes by the name Tomb Sweeping Day. That may conjure images of ghosts and graves, but in actuality it's traditionally just a day that comes from a long history of showing respect and deference to your ancestors and family. In keeping with that theme, in a special two-part story, this week and next week on the Mythographist, we're going to look at the legend of a young man who is revered as being a very filial son, one who did everything right when it comes to respecting your family. And his name is Erlang Shen. Join me, Jaer Christie, as I explore the hidden legends that shape the world on the Mythographist, Myths of Mainland China. Erlang Shen, Part 1. The Boy with the Third Eye. The village streets grow quiet, and eyes hidden in the nearby forest notice. A boy watches from the trees, then turns to his sister. "Yang-chan," he whispers excitedly. "Come, let's hurry into town, for the people have left their work and run to their homes. We shall be able to gather enough food to live for months." "Erlang," his sister answers impatiently, "do you think there is no reason the people have emptied the streets? Do not be so foolish. Surely a tiger or a band of thieves or some foul monster has come and frightened them off." But Erlang ignores his sister's words and rushes headlong into the town. He finds many things: pears, fresh from the orchards, eggs, laid this morning, delicious roasted pork, still steaming over the fire, a basket woven by skilled hands into which he puts his precious plunder. He does not stop to wonder why no eyes peer out at him through the windows, nor does he notice the darkening sky or the strange howling that fills the air like a lonely, angry wind. Erlang scoops hot rice out of a pot with his hand, and it is just as he drops it into his new basket that he happens to glance up. "Where are the clouds?" he says to no one, for the morning has grown quite dark. The rain is surely on her way. He plucks 2 pairs of shoes from a merchant's abandoned booth. And where's the wind, he wonders, for I hear her, but I do not feel her passing. She must be hiding with her sister the rain. He pulls a blanket from the rack of an absent craftsman. And where is the sun, he muses, for surely it is nearly noon. And, looking for where the light has gone, Erlang sees the truth. Now, not a man or woman upon the earth can help but quake in fear and awe when they see the sun disappear in the middle of the day, consumed by darkness. This most unnatural event can be nothing but an ill omen, a shadow of evil days to come. Erlang looks up, and he sees all this, the sun, and the shadow that crosses it, and the ring of fire that blazes where it should be. He sees this just as any other person would. But Erlang is not like you and I, though he does not know it. And so, when he looks upon the darkened sun, he sees the truth. A great dog stands in the sky, and in his jaws is the sun, which he bites, trying to swallow it. Erlang feels the chill in the air, for the warmth of the sun has vanished along with its light. "Hey!" he shouts at the dog in the sky. "Put that down!" The massive, monstrous dog does not seem to hear him. Erlang is annoyed now, for dogs should obey humans, no matter their size. Next to Erlang is the pot full of rice. He picks up a metal spoon. "Hey, dog! Little dog in the sky!" he shouts again, banging the spoon against the iron pot. "Let go of the sun. It's not as tasty as you think." So loud does the spoon clang against the pot, and so confidently does Erlang command the dog, that it stops. "Come here," Erlang orders, and he holds up a bit of the pork. "This is good to eat. The sun is not." And, faster than he can blink, Erlang finds a black dog, as tall as he, standing next to him, eating the pork from his hand. His basket is full, and his sister is waiting, so Erlang runs out of the village, basket in his hands and dog at his heels, before the townsfolk have time to realize what has happened. "What have you done, Erlang?" demands Yang Chen when he returns to her in the thicket beside the town. "We are starving by ourselves and cannot feed a dog, much less one so big. And surely the people looked out of their windows and saw you stealing all these things." Erlang begins to make excuse for himself, but before he can speak a word, an old man stands beside them. "Hello, my young friends," the old man says. Erlang and Yang Chen try to run away, but somehow he stands in their path, no matter which way they turn. "I mean you no harm," he says. "I am Yuding Genren, a student of the Way." Brother and sister glare at him. They do not trust this strange man. For years they have stayed hidden, and now he finds them so easily? "I have seen your heroic deed," he says to Erlang, and gestures to the great dog beside the boy. "You have seen the Xiaotian Chuan, and tamed him so easily. That is a feat no ordinary person could do. In fact, none can even see the heavenly dog, save those who have the third eye, a gift from the gods." "My brother has 2 eyes, declares Yang Chen, and he is stupid." "I only went to get shoes for you," Erlang snaps back at her, "and a blanket, and rice." Yuding Genren smiles. "If you will let me, I can teach both of you how to use your gifts," he says. "But where are your parents? And where is your family? Why do you live here in the forests?" "Our mother and our father and our brother, all of them were killed by an army when we were young," Erlang says. "We live wherever we may find the means to live." "Is this true?" Yuding Genren asks Yang Chen, and she nods, unhappy. The old man strokes his beard in thought. "Then come with me, brother and sister and dog from the sky, and we shall see what you may become." Years pass, and brother and sister live with Yuding Genren. He teaches Erlang the ways of Tao, that he may open his third eye, and trains him in combat to wield a deadly 3-tipped double-bladed spear. In turn, Erlang trains the heavenly dog, whom he calls Xiaotian, to obey his words and heed his signals. And too, Yang Chen grows, and she learns to use a magical lantern made from a lotus plant, which brings love to each person its light touches. Erlang ventures forth into the world, howling dog of the sky at his side, and together they slay monster and evil spirit alike. From Erlang's third eye comes a fearsome beam of fiery light, from his hands the skilled fury of his divine spear. As he grows in renown across the lands, those he saves bestow upon him the godly title, Shen. Finally, the day comes when Yuding Genren sits down with his young charges. He has just returned from a journey across the world, and knowledge sits heavy on his shoulders. "Erlang, Yang Chen, do you remember your parents or your brother?" he asks them, not for the first time. "Nothing," Erlang says, "except for the kindness and love in my mother's eyes." "Nothing," Yang Chen says, "except for the bravery and devotion in my father's eyes." Yuding Genren nods. "Long I have suspected the truth, but now I have found it. I have learned their story, which is also yours. Would you like to hear it?" And they nod, of course, and so he tells them this tale. Long, long ago, Yao Ji, the sister of Yu Huangdadi, the Jade Emperor, grows bored of the heavenly palace. She looks down at the world of mortals and longs for the beauty of its wildernesses, the excitement of its frontiers. She knows her brother will never grant her request to visit, so she leaves of her own accord, neither asking permission nor telling anyone of her intentions. Yaoji walks the peaks of the mountains, she flies through the clouds and dives in the rivers. She delights in the mortal earth, and she marvels at the speed with which all things grow and change and live and die, for the heavenly realms are slow and unvarying. And though the time feels short for her, a goddess, it is for no short time that she roams among those who will one day die. At last, after many earthly years spent living upon our world, there comes a day when Yaoji stands upon one of the 5 peaks of Wushan, shrouded in seas of mist even as the sun rises high in the sky. Yaoji looks out and sees a ripple of darkness and pain, and cries of despair fall upon her ears. So she flies to investigate, and there below her unfolds a dreadful sight. Like a black snake thrashing through undergrowth, a great and terrible dragon ravages the countryside, devouring men and women, horses and cattle, crops and houses. Poison and desolation follow in its wake. Yaoji sees its name and knows it, for long ago her brother Yu Huangdadi chained this dragon in the heavenly prison for its foul and deadly crimes. This dragon has escaped its chains, and though all the mortals might band together to fight it, they have no chance of victory, she says to herself. For long I have walked among these people, asking for nothing and asked for nothing. And although there is evil in the hearts of each one, there is also good, and none of them deserve a death such as this. So Yaoji readies her strength, and she descends through the clouds to fight the dragon. It is a long and brutal battle, for the dragon seethes with malice and cares nothing for its own safety, seeking only to destroy. And Yaoji pursues it across the mountain and valley, over hill and field. Even as she strikes it, the dragon lashes back at her. They trade blows that would demolish entire human villages. And finally, she summons her godly powers and makes a great cut, and severs the dragon's head from its body. And it falls to the earth, dead at last. Slowly, Yaoji comes down to rest beside it. She breathes heavily and admires her work. It has been longer than she can remember since she has had such a fight. And she feels faint as if relief compels her to sleep. "Goddess," calls a worried voice, and she wearily looks up to see a mortal man approaching. "Goddess, your heart. You are wounded." And Yaoji sees that, indeed, a huge gash from the dragon's claw has opened her breast and pierced her heart. Even so, even as she feels her life fading, the goddess smiles, for she knows she has done a good thing. Yuding Zhenren pauses, and he looks at his small audience. "This is your mother," he tells them, "Yaoji, sister of Yu Huangdadi, the Jade Emperor, the goddess who came to Earth." "Did she die?" asks Yangchan, her eyes wide open. "Of course not," Erlang snaps impatiently. "Wait for Master Yuding to get to the rest of the story." "Oh," Yangchan says quietly, and she waits for the mystic to resume his tale. Now, I know there's not a whole lot of showing respect for your ancestors in this story yet, but like I said, this is only the first half of the story. Next week we'll see where Erlang's reputation for being such a good son comes from. This is a really fun story for me because, unlike many of the legendary figures in China's mythology, Erlang Shen has a real character arc that's already defined for him. I added details about him and his sister being vagrant children, but practically everything else is part of the story as it's known today. Xiao Tianchuan is a monstrous mythical dog that eats the sun during an eclipse. He does exist outside this legend and is probably a lot older than it, but all the stories say that Erlang Shen has one as a pet. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you might notice that Erlang Shen's mother's adversary is not the first black dragon that leaves a trail of desolation. In fact, some versions of this story put Yaoji into the hole in the sky myth, replacing Nuwa as the goddess who kills Gonggong's black dragon minister, Xiangliu, who causes floods and wreaks general havoc across the earth. To me, This smells suspiciously like a retcon by Tang Dynasty Taoists, but the story is also sometimes linked to the Gun and Yu flood myths, which we'll cover in the coming weeks, and that could be an indication that all these flood and disaster stories are really about the same event. We'll almost certainly never know for sure, but in any case, I encountered these variations and connections much less than the standalone version in this story. Our hero seems to be equally referred to as Erlang Shen and Yang Jian, depending mostly on the source. Yang Jian in his appearances in Journey to the West and Investiture of the Gods, and Erlang Shen in his own legend. I stuck with Erlang because, to me, it's a more distinctive name. And this is where we're going to leave it for this episode. Be sure to come back next week for Erlang Shen Part 2, The Woman Under the Mountain. Thanks for listening. This episode of The Mythographist was written, narrated, and produced by me, Jaer Christie, with research by myself and Elena Tong, and music by Xiaoqing Luna Li and the China National Orchestra. If you liked this episode, stick around because there's lots more where this came from. Subscribe to get notified automatically when The Mythographist updates, and be sure to check out the rest of the episodes on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Finally, if there's a story that you grew up with that has shaped the way you see the world, I'd love to hear it. There are so many stories out there, and the more of them we hear, the more we'll understand each other. Remember, we can't learn if we don't listen. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on The Mythographist.